The anger grew against Iran after Donald Trump made 49 Tomahawks central to the new American pressure and turned the Strait of Hormuz into the hottest point of the crisis this Thursday, June 11, 2026. What we see is a short, tough, and calculated action to force Tehran to understand that negotiation without consequences is over. Trump announced that the United States could strike Iran with force if the regime did not accept an agreement after the downing of an American Apache helicopter near Hormuz. At the same time, the Pentagon stepped up the pressure. CENTCOM spoke about self-defense strikes against targets that threatened American forces and commercial ships. Iran responded with the most predictable threat. Trump also claimed that Iranian leaders sought contact while the bombs were falling, and Tehran denied it right after, just as any cornered regime usually does when it needs to maintain control. What happened? Why did Hormuz become a trigger? How did Trump corner Iran? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing, because here we have videos like this every day. Trump entered the crisis with a simple combination: limited military attack, public threats, and an open door for negotiation. His speech at the White House made it clear that the goal was not just to respond to an isolated incident, but to prevent Iran from escalating further, to turn negotiations into a stalling tactic. According to Reuters, Trump stated that the United States would strike Iran with force if a peace agreement was not secured after the downing of the American Apache in the Strait of Hormuz. He also said that the negotiation was still on the table as long as Iran accepted a deal with real effect, especially in the nuclear area. On the same day, Pete Raksif spoke after a meeting at the United States Central Command headquarters in Florida and said that American forces would strike key facilities in Iran by order of the president. The harshest statement was the message that if it was necessary to negotiate with bombs, the United States would know how to do that. This statement explains the logic of the operation. The agreement is still possible, but the Iranian regime does not choose the pace of the crisis on its own. The attack mentioned by American sources involved targets related to Iran's military surveillance, communication, and air defense. CENTCOM stated that precision munitions were used against structures that posed threats to United States forces and commercial traffic in the region's waters. The choice of these targets is important. It was not a shot in the dark. The intention was to reduce Iran's ability to monitor, threaten, and block movement in the Gulf without immediately turning the crisis into an open war of occupation or ground invasion. The version released by Fox News, repeated by international outlets, stated that Trump mentioned 49 Tomahawk missiles used against Iranian targets, with part of the operation taking place while he was monitoring everything from the Situation Room. The White House left the political message hanging. The Iranian regime would have two options: accept negotiation terms or deal with new rounds of military force. This is the detail that changes everything. The president didn't show up apologizing to Iran. He showed up saying he still wanted an agreement, but that the agreement wouldn't come from weakness. Iran reacted by trying to turn Hormuz into the centerpiece of its blackmail strategy. The Revolutionary Guard and Iranian media talked about closing the passage and attacking American targets in the region. There were also reports of alerts in Bahrain and the temporary closure of Kuwait's airspace, while Iran claimed to have hit structures linked to the United States. This reaction shows that Tehran tried to respond where it believes it has the most power: regional bases, trade routes, oil, and global fear. But this move also revealed the fragility of the regime. When a nation's response is to threaten the world's commerce, it admits that it needs to use chaos to be heard. CENTCOM disputed Iran's version of events in Hormuz. While Tehran spoke of a complete closure, the American command stated that commercial ships continued to enter and leave the Strait of Hormuz. This contrast is essential for political analysis. Iran wanted to create an image of total control. The United States wanted to show that the route did not belong to the Iranian regime and that freedom of navigation was still being defended. Since April, CENTCOM itself had already announced blockades on traffic entering and leaving Iranian ports, but preserving the navigation of vessels linked to non-Iranian ports. This reinforces the American logic: to pressure the regime, not to give Tehran the power to close off the world. Trump also stated that the United States secretly helped more than 100 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Reuters recorded this statement and reported that Secretary of Energy Chris Wright told Congress that the increase in oil flow through the passage happened with American military support. Trump used this point to argue that his action helped hold prices and prevent an even bigger shock in the market. For the general public, this detail matters more than a lot of behind-the-scenes analysis. Hormuz is not just a distant spot on the map. When Iran threatens that passage, it threatens fuel, shipping, inflation, and the cost of living in several nations. Iran's denial of contacts with Trump became part of the crisis as a part of the image war. Trump said that Iranian officials called while the attacks were underway and asked for the bombing to stop. Tehran quickly denied it. The cold reading is simple. A regime that lives off anti-American propaganda would hardly admit in the middle of attacks that it sought contact with Washington to ease the pressure. The denial is for the domestic audience, the pressure is for the real world. And in the real world, Iran was dealing with attacks, the threat of a new round of military action, mediation by Qatar, and the risk of losing even more ground at the negotiating table. The presence of Qatar as a mediator shows that diplomacy is not dead. According to Reuters and Axios, Qatari negotiators moved to try to keep a political solution open, even after the attacks. The operation was tough, but it didn't close the door to an agreement. It changed the balance at the table. Iran was taking its time, testing the limits, hoping to buy time. And Trump responded in the way that strongman regimes understand, with immediate consequences. Israel entered this game cautiously. Recent reports have pointed out concerns in Jerusalem about how far Trump would allow new Israeli actions against Iran. This helps to explain another aspect of the American move. Trump didn't just want to allow an uncontrolled escalation. He tried to centralize the pressure in Washington. By doing this, he put the United States in control of the pace, held back allies when he thought it was necessary, and sent the message that Iran would negotiate with the White House, not with a mess of open fronts at the same time. The historical factor also matters. Iran knows the history of the American presence in the Gulf. In 1988, in Operation Praying Mantis, the United States Navy retaliated against Iranian targets after the attack on the frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts. The lesson from that episode has always lingered in Tehran. When naval confrontation moves from threats to direct clashes, the cost for Iran can be very high. Trump is using this strategic memory in an updated way, now with drones, radars, air defense systems, cruise missiles, and real-time information warfare. I'm Milson Alves, Global, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe, and check the comments at the end to engage more with the Milson Alves community.